Hey DGR, this is Miss Olson. We're going to work on the practice files for our Unit 3 shapes and forms unit. This will be two different files. It'll be shapes 1 and shapes 2. So we're going to learn how to use the shapes tools. Open up a new document on Inkscape and save this as shapes 1. So file, save as, find your Unit 3 folder in your DigiArt folder area, and then name this one Shapes 1. All right. Once I've got my Shapes 1 file ready, I want to begin with, I believe we are beginning with our rectangle tool. The rectangle tool over here is the one that's slightly blue colored if you've got the old-fashioned Inkscape icons. And let me resize this a little bit. Just a heads up that if you ever want to resize the panel, hide it, or just make it smaller, you can grab these three little dots and pull it back and forth. So I've got the rectangle tool selected. When I click and drag, it may be just an outline. It may be filled. It may have color. Could be a few different things. So I want to walk you through the fill and stroke menu when we're working with our shapes here. So the fill is the inside of your shape. The stroke is the outside of your shape. Please leave the stroke on as a black line. And I recommend setting it to something like 3 pixels. Once your stroke is good, you can switch over to the Fill tab on your Fill and Stroke menu and set it to the solid square, the flat color option, and change the color. You know, get comfortable with adjusting these sliders. If it just shows up as black, know that you'll have to lift the L slider and the S slider up until you can actually see the color. So pick a color, any color, and maybe try to change the colors as you go. Once I've got my shape drawn, my rectangle, I can do a couple things to adjust it. So I can grab these corner squares to resize it in different directions. So test that out. I can also grab this circle node and drag it to make it more circular. So a little bit goes for rounded corners. A little bit more is really rounded corners. If you go all the way, it eventually turns into a circle or an oval. So you can move it back and forth. If you ever have this shape and you don't want those edges that are rounded up here in the menu bar, you can see a little sharp triangle that sharpens your corners back out. So make a rectangle and then next make a square. And we'll use that with our control button. So the control is always there to make things very even on both sides. It's there to control and restrict your angles. And so here you can see that it's controlling the two sides so that they stay even. So have a rectangle and have a square, maybe adjust the inside color of your square, and choose one of these to make the corners round on. Okay, next we have our ellipse tool. That's right underneath the rectangle tool. It looks like a pink circle. With this one, if I draw my shape and pull, it looks like an oval. If I draw and hold control, just like the square, it controls the ratio of the sides, so I can make a perfect circle. And with the ellipse tool, I can grab the squares to resize the sides. And with the circle, it does a few different things. So let's practice with that. I'm going to draw a couple of more ovals. Show you what we can do with them. So your standard ellipse is just a full oval or a full circle. But if I grab this little circle node and I pull on it, it will create a couple of different things. So right now it's creating an arc. That's where we have this black arc shape or a horseshoe shape with the stroke. Um, if I select it and start moving it, you'll see that it looks more like a segment for a pie chart. So this is a segment, but it'll eventually switch to an arc if I go around far enough. Um, and up here in the menu bar, I've got a couple of blue buttons that look like part of circles or a full circle. If I click on the full circle, it returns my circle to a full circle. And I can grab that circle button again and move it around. If I click on the far button, not the full circle, but the third one in, that adds a stroke to that top of that line. The center one removes the stroke. And the first one creates more of a pie chart shape, so a bigger segment. And it does love to switch to that middle option. So sometimes if you want one or the other, move the node where you want it and then just click the button for the style you want. So have an area that looks like a Pac-Man, a segment, have one that is just an arc. Uh, and yeah, have a couple of different options. Have some that are the plain circles. I think that's everything. So save this as shapes one. Make more until you feel really comfortable with these two tools, the rectangle and the circle. Then let's open up a new document. Bum, bum, bum. So for this one, this is technically like your fourth lesson, I believe, in Unit 3. For this one, save this as shapes 2. So save as shapes 2. So you're going to have two shapes files. Um, for this one, we are going to use our Polygon and Star tool, star/polygon. Click on the tool and in the menu bar, make sure it's set to the star icon. If you hover over it, it says star instead of a regular polygon with one handle. Lots of words, but that's the star. When I draw with this tool, mine already kind of looks like a starfish. Yours probably will look like a normal star. Um, you can adjust it just like the rectangle and the circle with your fill and stroke menu. Um, so, pick a color that you want to play with here. And then let's do some editing with the menu bar and the nodes on our star tool. Grab the corners and increase that until it has 8 corners. So you'll know that there's 8 arms here. Um, Grab the rounded option and play around with that. Make it more rounded or less rounded. Whoops. Less rounded would be 0, by the way. I went a little too far, so I'm going to delete that, set it to 0. 0 is going to give you those spiky edges. I'm going to leave it spiky for now. And let's go ahead and change the spoke ratio to 0.25 and see what happens. So as you watch this, you can see that the spoke ratio controls where the middle part comes in and out. So this is 8 corners, spoke ratio 0.25, no rounded corners. Let's make another star. And this time, go ahead and adjust the spoke ratio, the corners, and the rounded options to something else. So I'm going to do 5 here. I'm going to increase this. You can also grab the square to pull it in and out. And then rounded. Let's make these rounded. Like so. If you grab the square, you can adjust the ratio. You can also rotate it. So try rotating it slightly off center and see what it looks like. I'm going to make another star. This time I'm going to add more corners. I'm going to slightly lessen the roundness. And now I want you to pull on the outside square node to make these longer or shorter. Then, and I also change the color, I want you to grab the inside ratio, spoke ratio, and cross over one of those arms, and you create these like interesting spirograph forms. The more you cross over, the more complex it gets. So kind of rotate it around, test it out, see what you like, see what happens when you reduce the amount of corners. What does it look like? So you can have some really cool effects here. Okay, so I've got a couple of different stars. I was playing with the different options. Um, the star tool also acts as a polygon tool. So grab your star tool once again, and this time click over to the first button, regular polygon, with one handle instead of a star. When you click on that and you draw with it, instead of having the indents for the stars, the sides are now flat. Um, you can see here that my corners are still round, so I'm going to set that to 0 so that they're sharp. And I've got 8 corners, so I think that's a hexagon. Octagon? That's an octagon. 8 oct. Yes, 8 octagon. So you can adjust this and you can go all the way down to 3. So it's a triangle. A square has 4 corners. Um, I think this is a pentagon, 5 corners. I'm not good with the math. But you can add a lot of corners or have as few as you want. If you grab the square, that just sort of rotates it and makes it bigger. So this one, a little bit less that you can edit on. Just play with the rounded options, play with the corner options, and have a few of these until you feel comfortable with what you've got it set up like. So I'm going to do more rounded, less. All right. Once you feel good with both the star and the polygon editing, um, save your work as shapes too. And we have one final thing to learn about before we're finished. That is our layers panel. As it has been so far, we've been drawing on the same part of the paper for Inkscape. Uh, when we work with layers, think of it like working on different layers of plastic, and you can overlay those on top of each other. And these are really helpful because you can edit one layer without touching the other ones. You can also move things in front of behind each other. And it just gives you a lot of ability to edit and adjust. To find your layers panel, click Layer, Layers and Objects. And it'll open up your layers panel over here on the side where your fill and stroke menu normally goes. When you first create or open up this layers and objects panel, it'll have layer 1 as your first layer. If I open this little arrow next to it, it'll tell me that I have a various amount of paths. So I've got 3 stars, 1, 2, 3, and 2 polygons. If I select those on the layer, it'll select it on the page. I can hide a layer using the little eyeball. If I click on the eyeball so that it closes, everything disappears. It's still there, it's just hidden. If I click on the eyeball again, it opens up. Next to the eyeball, we have a lock, like a padlock. Right now it's set to open, so that means that I can grab things on this layer and move them around. If I close the padlock, I can't do anything to these items anymore, which is really, really helpful. Make sure to lock anything that you're not currently using on Inkscape. I can close this and make it more simplified. If I want to rename a layer, which I also recommend, double click on the word layer 1 and go ahead and name this layer main. Unlock the layer if it's currently locked. We're going to add a couple of layers and move our objects to those other layers. To add a layer, you're going to click on this little button that looks like a couple of papers with a plus sign added to it. It may just be a plus sign on your Inkscape. It depends, but if you hover over it, it should say add a layer, I think. If not, it doesn't look like it's doing here. Click on it. If another one shows up, you're on the right button. Um, I'm going to change this layer name to star. And then I'm going to click the button one more time and change that layer name to Polygon. You might be able to figure out what we're going to do from here. I'm going to take my main layer objects and move them and sort them into their proper layers. Grabbing the select tool, I'm going to select a star, edit, cut. It makes it disappear, but it's on my clipboard for my computer. So I'm going to click on the star layer, edit, paste. Now you can see that path 1 is on the star layer. So I moved it successfully. I can test this out by hiding it. If it disappears, I moved it correctly. I'm going to take my other two stars and using the shift key, select both of them at the same time to copy, edit, copy, or actually, sorry, edit, cut. We're cutting them out. Click on the star layer, edit, paste. If you hover over the bottom paste, you can select the option to paste in place, which sometimes is more helpful because it'll put it back where they came from. Once I have all my stars on the same layer, I can lock that layer and minimize it. Now I need to move my polygons to the polygon layer. So back to the main layer, select both of my polygons, and instead of clicking Edit Cut, I'm going to use the shortcut. And you can see what the shortcut is. If you do go to Edit Cut, it says Control X. So I'm going to click Control X on my keyboard, select my polygon layer, edit, paste in place. Now, when I hide my polygon layer, both of my polygons disappear. I can lock that and everything is where it should be. Save your work and then submit this along with the still 3 file for assignment 3A.